all approaches to constitutional interpretation are political. The problem with this isn't that it's political, it's that it's fascist. The politics are bad. It's not that there are politics, there always were. The politics are bad. Jesus Christ. All right, guys. Well, we're running into a bit of an obstacle. The problem is such, okay? I want to read this article. Critics call it theocratic and authoritarianism. Young conservatives call it an exciting new legal theory. Common good constitutionalism has emerged as a leading contender to replace originalism as the dominant legal theory on the right. The problem is that the idiots who wrote this article did not do so in a graphic novel format, and instead there are words. Now, obviously, this is ridiculous and antiquated. I have no idea why any serious, self-respecting website like Politico wouldn't frame this in like a manga panel format. You know, it's kind of embarrassing. But at the center of this debate, what debate? Doesn't matter, was Harvard law professor Adrian Vermeule, whose latest book served as the ostensible subject of the symposium. In conservative legal circles, Vermeule has become the most prominent proponent of common good constitutionalism, a controversial new theory that challenges many of the fundamental premises and principles of the conservative legal movement. The cornerstone of Vermeule's theory is the claim that the central aim of the constitutional order is to promote good rule, not to protect liberty as an end in itself, or in layman's terms, that the Constitution empowers the government to pursue conservative political ends, even when those ends conflict with individual rights as most Americans understand them. In practice, Vermeule's theory lends support to an idiosyncratic but far-reaching set of far-right objectives: outright bans on abortion and same-sex marriage, sweeping limits on freedom of expression, and expanded authorities for the government to do everything from protecting the natural environment to prohibiting the sale of porn. But if the symposium's nominal subject was Vermeule's new book, which shares the name of his theory, its real concerns were much broader. Since it was published in February of this year, common good constitutionalism has become a flashpoint in the broader intra-conservative debate about the future of the conservative legal movement. So as I've said before, the conservative legal theory is whatever it needs to be in order to promote conservative political policies, because conservatives are more politically foxy than liberals. Conservatives recognize that there's no such thing as an apolitical interpretation of the Constitution, so what they have done is dishonestly pretended that their highly partisan interpretation of it is actually an original interpretation, or originalism. The basic idea is that they will do and say whatever they want, but they will frame it as what the Founding Fathers would have wanted: an apolitical and completely original, like down-to-the-roots interpretation of constitutional law. You know, and obviously through this, you know, just coincidentally, an originalist perspective on, constitutional law just coincidentally happens to mean that you keep agreeing with the conservative, like far-right opinion over and over and over. Just, again, coincidentally. This just sounds like BS. It is. If you take a look at the legal justifications of many Supreme Court justices who are conservative, you will find time and time again that they are insane. You do not need to be a lawyer to look at many Supreme Court, conservative Supreme Court rulings and justifications to find like very obvious logical holes. One of the best places you can learn about this is from the 5-4 podcast, the podcast on why the Supreme Court sucks. And while the Supreme Court does broadly suck, even liberals within it, conservatives are pretty shameless in the extent to which they will willfully misinterpret the Constitution to serve their ends. This seems like the logical extension of that, in the sense that even originalism does not allow for them to make as conservative a position as they would like, so they need to move beyond it. This debate is unfolding in the shadow of the Supreme Court's landmark decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, but its scope far extends beyond constitutional debates over abortion. This conflict hinges on a more fundamental philosophical question. Does originalism, the theory of constitutional interpretation that conservatives champion for the past 40 years, provide the conservative movement with the sort of intellectual ammunition that it needs to tear down half a century of liberal jurisprudence and rebuild American law on more conservative foundations? Or is it time, now that conservatives have secured a decisive majority on the court, for the right to embrace a more aggressively and ideologically assertive legal theory? I do hate the way this is being framed. I'm sure that the article will be more critical as it goes on, but what we're talking about right here is ignoring the Constitution to push fascist legal jurisprudence. That's it. Yes, the 5-4 pod has videos on YouTube as well. They're straddling, as they often do, the debate between originalism and common good constitutionalism is the debate on the legal right now, said Mario Fiandero, the editor-in-chief of JLPP and the lead organizer of the symposium. When we spoke, Fiandero made it clear that the event was not intended as an endorsement of Vermeule's ideas. The purpose, he said, was simply to bring the discussion over common good constitutionalism out into the open, fostering free and robust debate about an important issue in the legal right. If the symposium was all about fostering debate, I asked Fiandero, would it be all right if I checked it out myself? Absolutely, Fiandero told me, and a few weeks later I received an emailed confirmation of my registration. But as the date of the symposium approached, there was reason to doubt whether free and robust discourse was really what the organizers had in mind. 2 days before the symposium was set to begin, my phone pinged with a message from Fiandero informing me my credentials had been revoked and the symposium was closed to all press. As far as I could tell, I was the only member of the media who was actually planning to attend, and Fiandero wouldn't tell me who didn't want me there. My frustrated appeals to Fiandero and the higher-ups at the Federalist Society, which touts an open press policy on its website, failed, though I was politely informed I could watch a live stream of the proceedings on the journal's Facebook page. As I had already traveled to Cambridge for the event, I settled on tuning into the live stream from the lobby of the hotel, where I would at least be close to the action. Oh well, I thought to myself, the revolution may not be televised, but at least it'll be live streamed. That's true. Vermeule coined the term common good constitutionalism to describe his alternative theory, and he was not coy about what it would entail. Unlike originalists and legal liberals, common good constitutionalists would not, quote, suffer from a horror of political domination hierarchy, end quote, and they would display a candid willingness to legislate morality. So, in other words, they will ignore the Constitution and just write in whatever they wanted. In sharp contrast to libertarian conservatives, common good constitutionalists would favor a powerful presidency ruling over a powerful bureaucracy. On the constitutional front, the court's jurisprudence on free speech, abortion, sexual liberties, and related matters would prove vulnerable to new challenges. Free speech. As a practical matter, a lot of young legal conservatives thought, why should we continue to support this project? Said Joel Alicia, an assistant professor of law at the Catholic University of America. This is being said after Bostock v. Clayton County, in which the court ruled by 6-3 margin that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act forbade discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. So basically, after the Supreme Court rules in a way they do not like, an assistant professor of law at the Catholic University of America says, why should we continue to support this project? The project being the very concept of constitutional law. There were a lot of younger legal conservatives who were more open to the idea of alternatives to originalism because they were so disappointed in the results that originalism had brought them. Listen to this. They're literally saying, yeah, we're open to constitutional fascism, ignoring the actual Constitution and just saying whatever we want, because an actual reading of the Constitution leads to outcomes we don't like. Keep in mind, there is no system that would null a Supreme Court ruling if it was utter nonsense. They could literally just rule on a case and say, yeah, it's now illegal to be gay, actually, if they wanted to. Or not illegal to be gay. They could rule that this law that says that protection, actually the Civil Rights Act is illegal. They could do that. They could say the Civil Rights Act is unconstitutional. They could do that. They could just have it in a case and go like, yeah, actually, I don't think it does this, actually. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. There are no checks and balances over them. I think the thing that offends me most is the name, common good constitutionalism. By common good, of course, this is euphemistic. By common good, of course, what they mean is like Christian fascism, in the same way that Hitler declared that he supported the common good, fundamentally the same. The term constitutionalism thrown in there, when it is explicitly about ignoring the Constitution, I know what they're going to go with, too. The idea is like, well, by pushing for free speech and writing on its importance, the Founding Fathers actually cared about social well-being. But now we've found that free speech does not actually produce social well-being. So we're going to follow the word of the Founding Fathers to pursue the common good and use the Constitution as a framework for understanding what goods they wanted to pursue. Rather than following the explicit legal recommendations of the Constitution, we are instead going to use them as a template, a roadmap for understanding what values the Founding Fathers cared about, which, you're never going to guess, align perfectly with those of Christian fascists. Yes, Exequio, exactly. This right here is this right here is like DeSantis over Trump, you know? This right here is fascism via proceduralism. It's a way of abusing existing systems as a way of achieving this end. Trump's not smart or patient enough to facilitate that. DeSantis is. During one of the panels at the symposium in October, Michael Ferran, a scholar from the University of Glasgow, suggested that bigoted views or preferences of the racist or sexist are incompatible with a robust notion of the common good. Vermeulen, notably, has not said anything so bold. Sure, Bainbridge. Just seeing which critical points I can highlight here is part of my broader goal of indicating how much of a threat this poses to American society. If I'm a federal judge who wants to be at the top of President DeSantis's list of appointments to the Supreme Court, but I don't want to necessarily write an opinion explicitly getting into common good constitutionalism, perhaps showing up at a conference or writing a paper on common good constitutionalism is the next best thing to be emphasizing that I am part of the project, said Michael Smith, a visiting professor at the University of Idaho School of Law, when I called him after the symposium. In Cambridge, Smith had been one of the few panelists who offered a left-of-center critique of common good constitutionalism, which he has called a nakedly political approach to constitutional interpretation. I'm going to kill myself, dude. All approaches to constitutional interpretation are political. The problem with this isn't that it's political, it's that it's fascist. The politics are bad. It's not that there are politics, there always were. The politics are bad. Jesus Christ. This is one of the things that critical race theorists were on about. I know it may seem difficult to believe because we imagine lawyers to be intelligent and this is so obvious to us, but a lot of lawyers legitimately believe that law is apolitical. I know, it's incredible to imagine. But yeah, a lot of them actually do believe that. They are that retarded. He said even he was surprised by how eager an originalist judge like Ho had been to stake out common ground with Vermeulen. Wow, a guy who supported the previous conservative pseudo-legal theory to promote fascism agrees with the newer version of that same theory. In conservative circles, Hammer, Josh Hammer, 33-year-old conservative pundit and podcaster who's the opinion editor of Newsweek. In conservative circles, Hammer has become a prominent spokesman for the brashly nationalistic group of conservatives who march under the banner of national conservatism. No, they're not nationalistic. They're fascists. Oh my God. The NatCons, as they're sometimes called, distinguish themselves from traditional conservatives by their explicit rejection of free market economic orthodoxy, their embrace of nominally pro-worker welfare. Dude, this piece is legitimately like laundering these fucking people. Nat-Soaks are not pro-worker. They just say pro-worker shit as a way of getting workers to vote for them while they fucking make all immigrants illegal. Hitler did the same thing. And their especially fierce prosecution of the culture war, by which you mean they're fascists. Oh my God. Dude, fucking come on, Politico. Jesus Christ. How much can you... This is like the equivalent of cop speak. Like, a bullet made contact with the cranium of a 3-year-old in an officer-related incident. Like, it's the exact same thing. I'm sorry, I should have warned you ahead of time, but this is the only prominent article talking about this. This is neutral framing for a morally wrong thing, which makes this article morally wrong. They might as well be talking about a bunch of racists, like in a neutral perspective, you know? Some say that sexual pleasure without the consent of another is morally wrong, but some, such as incarcerated rapist Joe Dickwaggler, say otherwise. Quote Joe, feels good, man. Thank you, Joe. In practice, Hammer told me common good originalism would shift conservatives' focus away from the sort of bloodless economic issues that still garner a lot of attention in Federalist Society circles. Things like shrinking the administrative state, rolling back government regulation, and preserving the doctrine of Chevron deference, and redirecting those energies towards the culture war, civilizational war, issues social conservatives really care about. So basically, they like the Federalist Society is full of 85-year-old white guys who do hate trans people, but mostly care about lowering taxes. And what these people want is for the Federalist Society to be full of people who really hate trans people, but will get around to lowering taxes eventually. Politico is owned by far-right German newspaper owner slash Fox News, copy Bild. All media is owned by the far right, except for Vaush, Vaush.gg. YouTube.com/C/Vaush. That's the only good one. What can we do about this? I don't know. Go to law school. Taken together, these two arguments, hold on. As a corollary to his argument for a strong administrative state, Vermeulen offers another theory about the principle of subsidiarity, a term that he borrows from Catholic social teaching, as it's traditionally understood in the Catholic political thought. Okay, hold on. What do you want to bet that Vermeulen is a convert? Every single insane fascist Catholic I have ever encountered was a convert Catholic, not a born Catholic. Here's the guy, by the way. He looks exactly the way you think he would. A convert to Catholicism. Every fucking time. Every Catholic convert is a Nazi. Every single time, dude. Do you know what the odds are of this? There are hundreds of millions of born Catholics and very few convert Catholics. The vast majority of people who convert with Catholicism are away from it, not to it. The vast majority. It's just a small sliver of the population, and they're all Nazis, and they all reject Vatican II, and all of their politics come back to them being little bitch boy porn addicts with male pattern baldness who desperately think that if they can just get rid of all the Tyrones who keep coming in white women before they can become a true Deus Vult crusader, just like their glorious ancestors. I can't believe I got that right. There are not that many Catholic converts. It's literally all mediocre men who are experiencing a crisis of masculinity, who are desperately looking for some kind of ideological framework that pulls them away from the suicidal depression they feel over how mediocre they are. Why are they Catholics and not Protestants? Vatican II. The Catholic Church, through its very nature, is more hierarchical and authoritarian because it is hierarchical, unlike Protestantism. Also, the rejection of Vatican II. Also, yeah, a lot of the Catholic converts have been more effective at marketing themselves to the incels. Oh, because they're pedos as well, yeah. Also, yeah, a lot of it is more appealing to fascists because, yeah, the fascists make appeals to tradition, and the Catholic Church has a very rich history running back basically forever, as far as we're concerned. Whereas the Protestant Church has 18 trillion different denominations, and it's just a messy post, Henry VIII bullshit. It doesn't have the same historical weight. It's the trad aesthetic, yeah. Vatican II. Back in the 1960s, the Vatican all got together and they were like, hey, we should update some of our beliefs, including the belief that Jews do blood libel and Jews kill Jesus. Yeah, they're saying in chat, yeah. Convert Catholics, a ton of them reject Vatican II as some kind of reformist, liberal, degenerate, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of them are just Nazis, fully just Nazis. What do you mean when you're saying Vatican II? Vatican number 2. 1, 2. Here's Pew Research. 7 facts about American Catholics. No, a lot of Catholics are not bad. Seriously. Catholics as a group, I would prefer to Protestants. Catholic converts are a very small subsection of Catholics. Catholic converts, they don't practice Catholicism. They don't go to church. They are religious purely in the sense that it has given them an aesthetic and cultural weight to promote Nazism. Nick Fuentes is a perfect example. A Nazi, and he's the guy who, when some of his supporters outed him, they were he didn't even do prayer circles or whatever. Nick had no interest in doing anything remotely religious, and nobody's ever seen him in a church. Because he's Catholic purely for the aesthetic. He just wants to be able to wave around the Deus Vult aesthetic as he, does and says Nazi shit. Vaush, I'm a Catholic convert. I'm sorry. And I work with RCIA in a metro area. We've seen quite a few young white guys being hyper-nationalist about it. Creeps me out. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Can you clarify your mass arrest position? Who exactly would be arrested? Republican politicians complicit in or supportive of a coup against the United States government or the destruction of its democracy. And what would they be charged with? Sedition. That's a crime. Sedition is a crime that they have empirically done. As it's traditionally understood in Catholic political thought, subsidiarity is a principle about the limits of government. It states that whenever possible, the more powerful authorities in a society should defer to less powerful authorities to perform responsibilities that either entity could legitimately carry out. But in common good constitutionalism, Vermeule offers another reading of subsidiarity, according to which powerful public authorities have not only a right but a duty to step in when less powerful political entities fail to protect the needs of the common good. There should exist a public authority with the jurisdiction to act under exceptional circumstances where the operation of subsidiarity so as to promote the common good through policy overriding, if necessary, the views of any subordinate jurisdiction. What he's arguing here is literally if a local or state or even federal government puts forward a rule that fails to protect the common good, such as letting gay people adopt, then it's our moral responsibility to override it. Taken together, these two arguments read an awful lot like a defense of a pseudo-constitutional dictatorship, or at the very least as a plausible legal justification for a right-wing coup. Thank you. Vermeule doesn't go to great lengths to obscure this conclusion. At the end of the section on subsidiarity, he cites the Catholic theologian Johannes Mesner to argue that in some cases a limited form of dictatorship may be compatible with the principle of subsidiarity. I love conservatives adopting a legal theory whose creator is literally just saying, yeah, dictatorships are like they're cool with my theory. By the way, just to let you guys know, like my ideology, like what I'm promoting here, the thing other conservatives are buying into, it's okay. Like dictatorship works with it. You know, the original proto-fascist was a Catholic convert who literally only converted to defend fascism. Man, goddamn. Born 1868. What a wacky guy. What is clear is Vermeule's ideas are still finding an audience with influential members of the conservative political establishment. 2 weeks before the symposium, Vermeule delivered a keynote address at a small conference at a Franciscan University of Steubenville in Ohio, which featured a guest appearance by then Senate hopeful and now Senator-elect J.D. Vance. A week before that, Hammer offered a fiery defense of common good originalism at the National Conservative Conference in Miami, which included speeches from DeSantis, Hawley, and Florida Senators Marco Rubio. They're literally promoting this alongside their next prospective president. Their legal scholars are literally just saying, I'm okay with dictatorship. This is an ideology of dictatorship. Please appoint me to the Supreme Court. I think you could justify fully the arrest and abolition of the Republican Party based on these grounds. I have no idea in what world. Isn't the whole point of sedition the whole point of sedition is like an attempt in part or in whole, successful or not, to impede the U.S. government in its processes or stop the enforcement of its laws from within the government? Yeah, we will suspend constitutional rule and promote a dictatorship. Also, we are elected officials. Hello. As I left Cambridge, it was impossible to know which side of the debate had it right, the skeptics or the boosters. Really? Thank you, Politico, for your spectacular ending. I really appreciate that. At the end of this long essay on a bunch of pseudo-legal intellectuals arguing that we should promote dictatorship and ignore the Constitution. I don't know. They had some good arguments on the left, on the right. But as my train back to New York lumbered through New Haven, I couldn't ignore the reminder of what had begun there in 1982. A handful of conservative law students, legal scholars, had already transformed America's legal landscape once. Who's to say they won't do it again? Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's phenomenal. That's fantastic. As I left the Nazi conference, it was impossible to say who was right, the protesters or the Nazis on stage. But, as I remembered, as I remembered the Weimar Republic, the Nazis have made a change to the world before. Who the is this guy? Who wrote this? Ian Ward. Don't cheapen my name. Is this guy like a professional enlightened centrist? Imagine if Marx debated William F. Buckley, the podcast socialists and conservatives love, by Ian Ward. The new liberal campaign to flip the bench, how judges became the newest target in criminal justice reform. How Democrats learned to love activist athletes. You. Jan 6 was just the beginning for the Proud Boys. I hate this guy so much. Liberals should be worried about the conservative comedy scene. Literally, the right is getting better at comedy and the left is afraid. Inside the progressive movement's TikTok army. Are Gen Z social media influencers changing the face of progressive political activism or just finding new ways to carry water for the White House? Man, I love this centrist guy. He goes to Nazi conference to hear Nazi guys explain how they're going to undo the Constitution and institute a dictatorship. Who can say whatever? A bunch of like 17-year-olds on TikTok make progressive arguments. Is this good? Who can say? What's the conclusion on this one? Would you call him a Nazi collaborator? No, I wouldn't call him a Nazi collaborator. I would definitely say that his article is a form of apologism. Who writes this dreck? Well, I guess I know who writes it. He does. At a Trump golf course, a country's rancor finds its perfect brunch spot. The Democrats' privileged college kid problem. Wealthy people are more likely to vote Republican. This is such a like psyop. College students are more likely to be progressive due to education and youth. But like people who have children in privilege are more likely to be Republican. How progressives are knocking out local judges across the country. How a DC bar became a haven for the Proud Boys. Is there anything on this guy that isn't just him promoting himself? Just a lot of him retweeting what looks like his own articles on Politico, which is a pretty normal thing to do for a professional Twitter account. Or anything like more... What about his likes? He is liked a fat cat sitting on a yacht in a wacky position. Some sports stuff. Guys, I'm really sorry. I wish I could tell you he's like a covert far-right guy. I think he might actually just be an enlightened centrist. I think he might actually be a guy who, either for intellectual or professional reasons, finds it prudent to cover literally every issue with the air of like a non-committal, morally distanced, like unopinionated objectivity. Oh, I hate this guy more than anything in the world.